just like that, it's 2021. Welcome back, balancers. I hope you all had a much needed and well-deserved rest. I know that in my break, it was a really good time to just slow down, really assess the things that went well, the things I need to improve on from last year, set my goals, and really just get ready for the year to come. I think a really common thought a lot of people have when it comes to, resetting for the new year is that age-old phrase, new year, new me. I want to scrap that. I want everyone to reframe and think, new year, better me. We don't want a new version of you. We love that you are unique and, there's only one of you in this world, so we don't need a new you. We just need to be constantly working on ourselves in any capacity or area you feel like you need to work on. So when I say, kind of thought about what went well or what I could do better, that's the angle I'm coming from and how I would encourage you all to kind of consider moving into the new year. For anyone listening who is struggling, getting their mindset ready or setting some goals for the year to come, you are absolutely going to love this episode. But before I get into that, I just want to make a note that on our social media, our handle is @TheBalanceTheory. I have posted a little bit of a New Year checklist, which has helped me, align myself with what I want this year. And I've also finally, as promised, posted my 20 books of 2020 that I finished last year. I know a lot of you were messaging me on Instagram asking me to post that. I'm so sorry it was a bit delayed, but it's finally there if you need some inspo for your year to come. Now, I hope you are all super excited. The lineup for this month is insane. I will be posting that on socials this week. I have 3 awesome women on, but the focus of today is the beautiful Hayley Westoby. So one of the many incredible things that came out of 2020 was meeting this beautiful soul who shares a lot of the same values and appreciates a lot of the same things in life that I do. So I feel very fortunate to have met her. Today we do a really big deep dive into goals and habits. So essentially how we both go about setting those, things that can go wrong or things that can be hurdles when it comes to setting those, and other things to bear in mind when you're doing that so you are sticking to them long term. So you might be someone listening right now who has set yourself goals for the year, or perhaps you're reflecting on last year, noting that, January came around, you're all excited and motivated, and then what happens in Feb, you lose sight of what's happened in Jan, what you've set yourself. So I think this episode is going to be critical to helping you stay on track. And it might also give a little bit of insight as to why those goals or targets have failed in the past. I know that you're going to get so much out of my interview with Hayley because whenever I just speak to her, even in passing, I feel like I'm downloading a wealth of advice and knowledge on life. And in general, she's just a feel-good person. So sit back, enjoy the next 50 or so minutes, and I can't wait to bring you more content this year. Thank you again for tuning in. Let's get into it. Well, if there's anything good that came out of 2020, it was meeting you. Yes. You beautiful soul.
Aww.
I'm very honored to have Hayley on the podcast. We met at a KX class, but I think informally, like Insta, knew each other before. But I think we just fate aligned and we just hit it off straight away. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think it's so funny as well. And I think being on a platform like Instagram, there's a lot of people that are like, there's a lot of negative things that come from a platform like that. But there's so many great relationships like this relationship that I've formed on Instagram that I just wouldn't change for the world.
Yeah.
And I just wouldn't have met those people otherwise. So I think I think there's a lot of positive things to come through from that platform.
For sure. So for anyone who's listening who does follow Hayley, you might already know a little bit about what she does with herself, but you might actually not know the full extent because you've got a world of things going on. So please share with everyone what it is you do.
It's funny. So my full-time job, I am a content and event director for a large advertising group, and I'm obviously based in Sydney. But as a passion of mine, and having lost quite a large amount of weight, I have also started training people and kind of focusing on that kind of health and well-being route with a background in, as an athlete. So that's kind of what I do, but I suppose then on my platform and my Instagram, a lot of people will follow me because they like the authenticity, they like the fact that I just keep it real, and I think that it baffles me sometimes that people send me messages saying you're so authentic, and I sit back and I'm like, hang on a second, isn't that what this platform
what else am I supposed to be
for?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's crazy that deception on Instagram especially, or social media, or media in general has become so common now that people are surprised when you're authentic.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame that it's perceived that way.
Yeah, and so I'm really lucky. I've got an incredible group of followers. They're very conscious and caring, and recently I've been quite unwell, and the amount of messages that came through, I literally couldn't keep up. I was very overwhelmed. But yeah, I think in terms of what I do, my day job is as a content and event director. I love creating content. I love producing experiences that are memorable. But from an Instagram and kind of health and wellness point of view, that's also what I do.
Awesome. So can we talk a little bit about your journey into fitness? So you said you lost a considerable amount of weight, and then like you consider yourself like with a background as an athlete.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit about that journey? Was it what kind of kick started you, and how did you sort of fall into it all?
Yeah, so I suppose I moved from the UK when I was 13. So I'd been out to Australia once before for 3 years, and then I moved out when I was 13 full time because my dad is in the military, so we moved around a lot.
Which probably explains why some of you may not be able to pick her accent. That was something I was awfully confused about, but it is a mix of...
It's funny, I don't think I have an accent. When I call my grandparents in the UK, they go, "You sound so Australian." And then when I speak to, friends or new colleagues or whatever, they're like, "Are you from New Zealand?"
Yeah, it's a bit of a Kiwi vibe.
No, I think it's a combination of people that I've spent time with, areas that I've spent a lot of time in. So, yeah, apologies for that. You might have to put subtitles on it.
No, all good. We'll do translation.
Yeah.
You moved here when...
I moved here when I was 13. My parents had always been quite active. They'd always encourage us to be active. It's not like I was a overweight child growing up or anything like that. Both my parents are fairly active. Anyway, my mum was a long distance runner growing up, and my dad has been in the military since he was 17. So he went through Royal Marines training when he was 17 and has been in the military ever since, still in the military. When we moved to Australia, coming to Australia from the UK, it's a huge sport culture here. Like coming to school, and before you've even been selected to get into a school, they ask you what your sport preference is. And I had no idea. Like I'd come from a school where I didn't have to wear a uniform. It was a co-ed school, and I never played sport really in the UK, but was active, would always play in the playground or whatever. Yeah. Came to Australia and I had to wear a full uniform with a tie and brown shoes. They were hideous. And a girls' school, so no boys. And I had to choose a sport. So I kind of fell into it. I was fairly, active as a child and fell into it, picked up various sports at school and really loved it. And then I started doing surf lifesaving down at the beach, and I loved that. That was like my life. Like I'd spend every weekend down at the beach. And then just kind of kept on picking up lots of different sports. So I played touch football, I played rugby sevens, I played water polo, and loved all of them. And then it was about year 11, I think it was, I had a really bad accident with my knee. And then from there, I kind of couldn't exercise and fell into that, and then was really busy with the HSC. So stopped doing sport because I wanted to focus on the HSC, and then went to uni straight after that and kind of fell deeper into that hole because I moved away from home for uni. I ate what I wanted to when I wanted to. I was like, oh my God, I don't need to defend the fact that I'm having biscuits at 10 o'clock.
Mum's not watching.
Mum's not here, yeah. And so I kind of fell into that, you wanted to fit in university. I didn't know anybody going to university because I moved away for university. Yeah. So I wanted to fit in. I was going out when everyone else was going out. And I kind of let all of those values and morals that I had slide and pass in order to fit in, which was great because I made some great friends, but I also put on a lot of weight. So in my third year of university, I decided enough was enough. I had a heated argument with my boyfriend at the time, and in the heat of the moment, he said, I don't know if you can swear on this, but he said,
go for it.
he said, lose some weight, you fat bitch, was shots fired, we're having a bit of a screaming match.
I'm hoping you proceeded with walking out the door.
I literally just didn't say anything. I was so gobsmacked. And then it was probably 3 weeks later, my parents and my family were watching The Biggest Loser, and I've never really been into any of those shows. And I remember watching this girl weigh in for the first time, and she weighed less than I did. And I was like, she is on a show predominantly for fat people to lose weight because they're unable to lose it on their own, and I weigh more than her. Like, I need to do something about this. So
that was your moment.
That was my moment. And I think it's really funny because I always say in my head, you know, people are like, oh, he was so awful for saying that. And I'm like, no, that was like my fuck you moment. That was like, fuck you, I can do this, I will lose weight and I will do it for me and I don't need you.
Well, it's all about how you respond and react to situations, right?
Yeah.
And I think you probably can talk more to this like as we progress in the podcast, but it is like, you know, things will happen out of your control, and it's just how you choose to react or respond to it that will determine how it plays out in your life. This is a perfect example of that.
Absolutely. And like for years before that, when I was a bit bigger, that's a bit of an understatement, isn't it? I was a lot bigger. My mum and like friends would be like, do you want to come for a walk? And I'd take it so personally. I'd be like, are you calling me fat? Do you think I need to exercise? And it's like, I take it so personally because it was something that I was conscious of, but I was not ready to admit it. And it wasn't until that moment that I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. And so I literally set the smallest little goal for myself. I said, I've got 4 weeks. I'm going to lose 5 kilos. If I lose 5 kilos, I'd be happy. That's all I wanted to lose. Did it in like 3.5 weeks. I think I weighed in and I was like, oh, this is really easy. And then I was like, okay, next month, what am I going to do? And every time I set myself a small achievable goal and I met it, I was motivated then to set another goal because I was like, oh, I've done that. And then as I started to lose weight, I think I lost about 25 kilos over the case of, span of about 8 months. And then I was like, okay, I'm really happy with where I'm at weight-wise, which is funny in hindsight because I look back now and I'm 65 kilos lighter.
Than that point.
Wow. Or no, 65 kilos in total.
Yeah.
So
still huge.
From the beginning, yeah. And I was like, wow, I was really happy with just having lost 25 kilos. So happy. So at that point when I was super happy with where I was at weight-wise, I then changed my goal from a weight loss goal to a fitness goal. So I wanted to do X amount of classes a week, or I wanted to lift a certain amount, or I wanted to do a chin up or whatever, and then started working towards those goals as well. So I think that those little goals were kind of my turning point, and then through those little goals I've kind of created those habits that have kind of stuck with me now long term, that a lot of people will say, you know, you're so obsessed with training, or like, oh, surely you can just do one day without training. And I think that for me, it's not necessarily about the obsession. It's about the fact that I know what it's like to not move my body. Yeah. And I know how I felt, and I know what my mental health was like. And B, I'm like, I don't even think about it now. Like, it's not even something that I even go, oh, I've got to exercise. Don't get me wrong. There are some mornings that I get up and I'm like, it is early and I don't want to do this, but I know
there's
that
a 4 at the start of the time. It's not happening.
I know that I'm going to feel better for it. And I think on those days, I spoke about it yesterday on my Instagram, I woke up super tired, sore, exhausted, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to feel better after I exercise. So I made my exercise more appealing, and I chose a spin class that I do online that I love the soundtrack to. And I did that because I was like, music is a big thing, a big mood changer. And I'm like, I did that and I felt so good afterwards because I was like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. Yeah. But I think you're not always motivated, but I think that those little habits on repeat are the things that have kind of set me up for now. For sure. We'll get a little bit more into your habits in just a minute, but I do want to touch on something. So you said that your goal, when you were, starting a journey, changed from a weight loss goal to a fitness goal. Yeah. My question is, do you think that anyone sort of starting on their journey should, from the outset, try and shape their goals as fitness goals, like how you've just described them, rather than like numeric, measurable, like specific goals like that? Do you think there is merit in going one way or the other? Yeah. Or do you think it was only because you achieved those measurable goals you were able to then reframe them as more kind of like fitnessy, holistic goals? Yeah. Look, I think that if you were at the weight that I was at, it was severely unhealthy. Like the amount of pressure that was on my body, generally, my organs, I was like, couldn't walk around the block without panting. Like, it wasn't a good place to be in. So I think if you are severely overweight and you are wanting to kickstart it, the weight drops really quickly when you change something small, when you are that overweight.
Yeah.
So
can kickstart it quite well.
Numbers-based thing and a small number. Don't, like, if I had started out on my journey saying I'm going to lose 65 kilos, probs wouldn't be here today, talking about it, right? So I think that if you are severely overweight, I do think that for the first 6 months or 4 months, focus on that number, because that's the thing that's going to be really quick. And that's going to be the thing that with a couple of tweaks to your diet or your training, that's going to drop really quickly. And those results will then motivate you to go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And also, if you're not training actively or regularly, from going to that to then going, okay, I want to do a chin up, that can be really...
bit over the mark.
It can be really disheartening.
Yeah.
I think, if I tried to pull myself up 65 kilos heavier, I would just have given up.
Yeah.
So I think that for me, and it might be different for every person, but I think, if you've got a lot of weight to lose, I think the numbers thing is a good way to kickstart it, and then shift your priority to no longer being about the number on the scale to a physical or a fitness-based goal. But I think that if you are already at a healthy weight and you have a fitness or health goal, I definitely think that turning your attention from an aesthetic goal to a fitness-based goal is so much more beneficial, because that benchmark will always move, right?
That's
like
right.
If I say I want abs, right? You get a six-pack, you can see them. Everyone's like, wow, she has abs. You'd be like, oh yeah, but I want like these ones and I want these ones to show. And that goalpost is always changing. It's the same as building bums. Like, I see so many girls being like, I want a bigger bum. And I'm like, that's great. But that goalpost is so wide.
And it's also often dictated by whatever the trend is, right?
Absolutely.
So like and the thing with like setting yourself goals, I'm going to jump ahead. Let's just chat about the goal bit now. The thing with setting goals is you'll set a goal, you'll get there, and then like you said, the goalpost goes further back. And so I think you need to have this relationship or a little bit of freedom when it comes to your goals, to a point where you can be flexible, they can change. But I think a key part of that is the celebration part. So when you actually get to the goal, rather than go, oh, but I actually want this now, you celebrate and you acknowledge, okay, I've actually done this. So when you lost the 25, you were happy at that point, you know, and then you reset another goal. And that's probably what actually spurred you to keep going in that direction.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of the time we forget to stop and smell the roses, like the age-old saying, like, but you forget to stop and think, wow, I've actually accomplished all this. Like, I haven't, saved X amount of money yet, but when you break it down, like, I'm on track to getting there, or whatever the case is.
Yeah, and I think talking about rewards, it's really funny. One of my favourite sayings is, do not reward yourself with food, you're not a dog. I love food, and I know you do too. So I love my food, but I think the if you distill that quote into fundamentally what it means is that, there's no point in rewarding yourself if you've been cutting out junk food, right? And you go, for 12 weeks, I'm going to cut out junk food. And you cut out junk food, and then at the end you're like, okay, now that I've cut out junk food for 12 weeks, I'm going to have all of the junk food that I missed, right? It's counterintuitive to what you're actually achieving, because what you're rewarding yourself with is the exact thing that you're trying to get rid of or avoid in your diet. So for me, with the training and my goals when I set it up, was I set monthly goals, because the 4 weeks is super achievable and it doesn't seem like too far down the track. Yeah. And then at the end of each of those months, if I had hit the goal that I had intended, I'd buy myself more activewear.
That's
or
a good
more
one.
shoes, like running shoes. Because by rewarding myself with something that is actually going to help my goal or my habit, as opposed to hindering it, you're then actually helping yourself.
Yeah.
And like, one of the biggest things for sticking to a goal or a habit is making sure your environment supports that goal or habit.
For sure.
And if you're cutting out junk food and then you reward yourself with junk food, your body's going to continue cutting it out and then continue rewarding it with junk food, which is just so counterintuitive to what your body needs or wants.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So let's kind of condense that. So when it comes to setting goals, one of the things that you do that actually, I've got a 2-step thing, and it's probably exactly the same as you. And the first would be breaking them down into small, achievable goals. So, for example, if your yearly goal, let's maybe talk about a training goal, right? You want to end up squatting 100 kilos by the end of the year. And at the moment, you can only squat 50. That seems like very overwhelming when you think about it, like far out. I've got to double what I can put on my shoulders by the end of the year. But when you break it down, that's only what you've got to, every 6 months, you've got to just go up to 25, or every quarter you've got to go up, and you start breaking it down and the small things become achievable. And the second part of what you've said, which is also something I do, is the reward piece. But I really like what you said. You make the reward kind of fit into whatever the goal is. So that's actually, even like, it could be if it was a financial goal,
don't go out then and spend it all. Like if you're saying, hey, I'm saving $500 a month, great. If I do that for 12 months and at 12 months time, I'm then going to go out and buy something because I've been restricting myself, not buying anything, then it's counterintuitive to what you're trying to achieve. Yeah. Whereas, if you say, for example, for me, one of my goals is to read more, right? It was 2 years ago, I set a goal to read 12 books in 12 months, and I did it, and it reignited my passion for reading, which I kept on doing. Last year I did, and I read, but not nearly as much as I would have liked to. This year I want to do it again, so Josh, my partner, and I are doing 12 books in 12 months again. It helps when you've got your partner on board to do it, because instead of laying in bed on a phone, we're laying in bed reading. But with that, the reward is, once you do that, then buy more books. Yes. To continue reading.
And who doesn't love fresh books in their house?
It's not to pick your phone up and go on social media. Yeah. Because if I go, okay, well, if I read 10 pages, and then I can go on social media, it's counterintuitive, because all I'm looking forward to is the social media.
That's right. And that reward doesn't measure or doesn't stack up with your goal. And that's actually a really good example. I set 20 for last year. I literally hit it like 1 hour before New Year's Eve. I thought I had hit the 20, and then I realized like 3 days before was 19. I was like, I have to bash it out now. But I like reading as an example, because when you break it down, you realize, okay, how many books? Yours is easy. It's one book a month. But say with the 20, that's like one every 2 to 3 weeks. And I think one thing people forget to do when they set goals, that's fine. You make them small, you set yourself rewards, but then you actually have to sit down and think about, how is this actually going to fit into my routine? Yeah. So if you say, I want to read, but you don't say to yourself, okay, when I go to bed, I'm going to go to bed half an hour earlier, and that's when I'm going to read. Or when I'm on the train, I'm not going to pull out my phone, and that's my reading time. If you don't actually dedicate time to making that habit come to life, then you're more than likely not going to stick to it at all.
Absolutely. And I think one of the biggest things people fall back on is, I don't have time for it. Like, I don't have time to read. I was one of those people. I was like, I'm so busy. I literally jam-pack my day from morning to night, and I do not have time to read. But I instead looked at it. There's this technique called habit stacking. And if you have a pre-existing habit, for example, working out every day or getting a coffee every day, and that's something that you do, every day, that you do every single day, and that is a pre-existing habit. If you then want to read more, you should stack that new habit on top of that pre-existing habit, and then it becomes a kind of stacked habit. Because it's easier to implement something on top of a pre-existing habit than it is to make a new time, or go, okay, well, instead of going to bed at 9 o'clock every night, I'm going to go to bed at 11 so that I have time to work out in the evening. That's not going to work. Yeah. Because you have to force an entirely new behavior. Whereas if you can tap into an existing behavior that you're already doing,
perfect,
then the success is halfway done. Yes. It's just about stacking that on top. So, for example, my mum walks down every morning to get a coffee. She walks down to the beach. She said, I want to do some more walking. I want to walk longer, because she's like, at the moment, all I do is walk down to the coffee shop and then I walk back. And I said, well, walk longer, but get your coffee after you've walked longer, because that's your reward for doing your longer walk.
And it's already the signal for the walk is over.
And she's already getting up and going out. So I think the biggest thing as well is with those habits, if you're trying to start something new, definitely stack the habits. But every habit, I firmly believe that every habit can be started within 2 minutes.
Okay.
Right? And I have a 2-minute rule as well. So 2 minutes is all it takes for a habit. So it's not necessarily reading 10 pages every night is your habit, because that doesn't take 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's picking up the book every night.
Yes.
Right?
It's like putting on the shoes to go for the run.
It's not going for a run every night. It's putting on your shoes. It's, someone said to me one of their goals was to be less judgy. And I love that. But breaking that down, and what that means is, instead of judging somebody at face value, I'm going to take longer to get to know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And then distilling that even further is, okay, well, I'm going to ask them 5 different questions that I typically ask somebody when I meet somebody.
Yeah.
And that's your 2-minute goal.
Yeah.
It's the same as a 2-minute rule, in terms of, if I don't want to do anything or do something, I'll be like, okay, I'll just do 2 minutes of it. I had to do my expenses for work the other day. I was like, I can't stand looking. I could never be an accountant. But I was like, okay, I'm going to do it for 2 minutes, and then I'll do something else. And I literally once I had started it, done 2 minutes, then if I wanted to stop, I could stop. But once I had started it, then I was like, I'm already here. I'm just going to keep going.
Well, this is the thing, right? I don't know if anyone's read Jim Quick's book, Limitless, or seen any of his talks. I've recently read it, and I have had the honor of seeing him speak in person. But one of the things he says is, it's like flossing your teeth, right? People always forget. But if you set yourself a reminder, just floss one tooth, right? Like, who's going to floss one tooth? But if you just set yourself that goal, just floss one tooth, by the time you're there, all your teeth are getting flossed. So it's the same with like goal setting, or like, so I quite like that. It's like, just do it for 2 minutes. And then if you're really hating your life, you can stop. But more often than not, once the ball's rolling, you're already there.
Well, that was like me the other night. I was exhausted. I think I got into bed at just up after 11, and I was like, I haven't read today. And that's my goal. It's just to read every day. It doesn't matter how many pages, just read.
Yeah.
And I got into bed and I was like, I really don't want to read. I was like, okay, I'll just do it for 2 minutes. So I set a timer on my phone, picked up my book, my alarm went off, and I was like, oh no, I'll finish this chapter.
Yeah.
And it's the subconscious. And I think when it's rewarding, like finishing a chapter or something like that, that's when that dopamine cycle or loop kicks in, and that's when you continue doing it. So I think, if it's the same as, why toothpaste was invented, going back to your flossing example, toothpaste, fundamentally the cleaning product for your teeth is not mint flavored.
Yeah, it doesn't give you the tingles. That was just a sales
It's literally just I
think we've read the same book.
Fluid.
Yeah. The Power of Habits?
There's a lot of them.
Yeah.
But like, he invented that, and it's the same as hand washing. Soap itself doesn't froth up unless you put a certain thing in it. And when it froths up, it becomes a little bit more satisfying, and you go, oh, there's so many bubbles, I'm going to cover all my hands with it. So people wash their hands more. So I think where you can make a habit attractive, or a goal attractive, the more likely you are to do it. And you can make everything attractive, even if it's cleaning a room.
Well, I think it comes down to, as well, like, on top of that, it's why are you doing something, right? For example, if you hate asparagus and I told you got to eat it, like, you really just want to have it because it's good for you or whatever. If every day you're eating asparagus, right? You're eating at the same time every day, in your head, you still hate asparagus. So the emotion attached to that habit or doing the thing is very negative, right? You're not thinking it's good for me, or I might like it, So I think it's important to think about the emotion that attaches with doing the thing. Yeah. With exercise, like,
absolutely.
I'll be the first to say it's not always enjoyable. I love training, but the actual act of exerting yourself and depleting your energy is not always the funnest thing in the world, especially when you're in those moves at reformer that you just want to, the booty is just like not handling it. But that, like, at the end, you're going to feel so good. It's great to move your body. That strengthening all these little muscles is so important and for the long-term health. So, again, like, if you are finding it difficult to maybe implement a habit and, you tried out some of the things we've spoken about today, I think another thing is considering what emotion goes with that habit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, as I said, creating an environment that supports that goal is so important, whether it's your partner, whether it's, for example, if you didn't want to eat chocolate, but you always have chocolate in your fridge because your partner has self-control. It has nothing to do with self-control. It's got to do with the fact that maybe your partner doesn't go into the fridge as often, but every time you open the door, that's all you see. So it comes down to circumstance and environment, and I think that if you can create an environment, I read this really great book which talks about designing your home to suit your goals or to suit your habits. And it talks about each space in the house should have one purpose and one purpose only. So, you know, we're here in your home, and I think that, you know, if you record your podcast here, you shouldn't eat here. You shouldn't do anything else here, because this is your one centralized place for producing podcasts. Because what happens, especially at home, is if I go, oh, okay, I'm going to be on Instagram less today, but then I sit down on the couch, that's an instant trigger for me to pick up my phone and start scrolling or checking emails. So if I want to be less conscious, I either sit down on the couch and I don't have my phone with me.
Yep.
Or I'm being more acutely aware as to the triggers that set me off. So if I'm sitting in the kitchen working, am I going to feel more hungry? Yes, probably. If I'm working in my study, am I going to feel hungry? Probably not, because I'm
Not
sitting
associated
in a different room.
Yeah, and it's actually quite interesting for majority, well, I'd say quite a lot of people had to work from home bulk of last year, probably still working from home or at least split. So this is quite interesting. I think if you're living in an apartment, it's quite small. It's something to be very, very conscious of, because sometimes you can't always, you know, work outside of your bedroom or work outside of your kitchen. To be honest with you, I put my standing desk right there.
Yeah.
And I'm like arm's length from the fridge.
Yeah.
But it is about, if you can't physically do that, which I think is great if you've got the space for it and you can dissect, you know, what every purpose is for. But if you can't, it is about being very acutely aware of what those subconscious automatic triggers are. You know, like what do you do when you sit at the table automatically? Like I have a rule, we try not to do phones at dinner. We try not to do any TV or any sort in the bedroom either. It's, you know, if you want to do that, it's on the couch. So
and that's where those bad habits are formed, I think. If I'm sitting at my kitchen bench and that's why they say you should only ever do like one. Multitasking is great, and it's got me to where I am today. But I think that if you are sitting eating your lunch or your dinner, you shouldn't be scrolling through Instagram, because when you're eating and you're feeling amazing because you're eating yummy food and you're scrolling through Instagram and you're getting that reward of scrolling through Instagram, they're two contradicting things that are innately, the more you do them, they're going to be stacked on top of each other. And then next time you pick up, you know, something to eat in the kitchen, you're going to be like, oh, I'll check Instagram, because they become more and more one task as opposed to two separate tasks. Yeah, no, that's a good point. So while we're on the topic of habits, what are some of your non-negotiables? I have a lot of non-negotiables, but I think it's funny, I was talking about non-negotiables for a relationship, right? Non-negotiables for a relationship need to align to my values. Like, yes, 100%. You know, my family are important, you know, my training is important, my career is important. Yes, I want my own family in the future, and those kinds of things are non-negotiable. So I think, you know, it doesn't matter how attractive the guy is, how successful the guy is. Like, if he doesn't align to your non-negotiables, it is never going to work, right? And if you don't know your non-negotiables, you'll find you might be switching through people quite quickly, even with friendships, actually. Absolutely. Same, any relationship. It's any relationship. So with its partners, friends, you know, if your friends don't hold the same values that you do, it's the same love languages, right? Like, if I show my affection in terms of bringing gifts, right? But my friends don't do that, but that's the only way that I feel affection, you're going to feel very unloved. I'm going to feel very unloved. And that's the same for work. It's the same for personal. It's everything. But in terms of non-negotiables from a day-to-day basis, movement is really important, and it's critical for my mental health. You know, a few years ago, I was training quite a lot. And so 3 gym sessions in one day now is not a lot, because that's what you did 2 weeks ago when I did a boxing session. That's a one-off though. Okay, like, good. It's not an everyday thing. You're making me feel bad. No, it's not an everyday thing. I think that used to be normal for me. Wow. Like, that used to be normal, and I would train. I just think of how much you would have had to eat to give yourself. But the thing is, I was under-eating, so I had no energy. Right. I was overtraining. Like, this is the lessons you learn. Detrimental. To your mental health, to the way you actually feel about yourself. And that's where exercise can be really detrimental to how you feel. Yes. You know, not all exercise makes you feel great. And when you're overtraining, that is certainly where you start to feel like shit. Burnout and... Absolutely. Yeah. So my non-negotiables from a day-to-day basis is movement. And this year I've slightly changed it, because it used to be to train every day, but that's just not realistic. So for me, it's about moving every day. So whether that's going for a walk, doing a yoga flow at home, spinning at home, boxing, whatever it is, weight training, is doing something every single day, because I know that my mental health benefits because of it.
And do you have like a minimum time, like 20 minutes at least, or so you doesn't matter? Just
just
walk
to
around
do
the block, it's fine. Perfect.
Anything, like movement. And I have this saying, which is like movement over intensity, which is like always prioritize that movement. If you're just sitting there going, I really don't feel like doing this HIIT class, don't do it. Go and do something that's a little bit more calmer on your body, like a yoga class, or go for a walk and take in the view, or walk with a friend. If you're not feeling mentally well, don't sit and train for hours on your own, because that's not going to make you feel good. I'll go for a walk with a girlfriend because that we can chat and I'm moving and, we can talk about things and things like that. So I think that, it's really important to have like a non-negotiable that's achievable every day.
Yes.
And like I said, it can be done in 2 minutes. So it doesn't matter if I do a 2-minute stretch sequence.
Yep.
I've moved today.
Yeah,
it's not sitting, right? So that's one like non-negotiable. I suppose the other non-negotiable is prioritizing myself. I think that 2020, I think a lot of the years actually, many years, we've glorified being busy. We've,
honourable badge to the hustle
absolutely.
And the bustle.
And if you ask anybody, hey, how are you going? Oh, busy.
So busy.
It's like an immediate response. I still do it because it's like, it's the easiest way to sum up what you're doing. But that doesn't answer how you are. It answers what you're doing. So I think that, we're so quick to say, oh yeah, just really busy, lots going on, busy, 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 busy. And that's all it is. But it's this glorification of being busy that burns us out and that forgets, if we forget that actually being busy is very different to being productive. And I think there's this huge glorification of being busy in, that relates to being successful, relates to being financially well off. It relates to being well and healthy. And I think that's so wrong. So I think that in 2021, I really want to prioritize me, both professionally, personally, within my fitness, my training and my work, because I think that at the end of the day, there's no one going to look after you other than you. And if you can't look after that energy.
Yeah, if you can't even look after yourself, you can't expect someone else to do it for you. But if I'm just going to think about what you just said in terms of balance, I think that's a really nice way to sum it up. Like, your balance this year is you prioritizing you in all the areas that matter to you. And at the end of the day, like, people who are busy are not necessarily balanced in their own right.
Yeah.
Someone who maybe is a CEO, no children, still makes time to work out and gets out on the weekends, could very well be balanced, even if they're doing crazy hours. It really comes down to what your soul needs, what your body needs, and what's important to you at the end of the day. So I think you've summed it up nicely. So
I think it's really important with that as well, when people talk about balance, and it always makes me laugh when people get angry at people who say that they're busy, but they don't think that that person is as busy as they are.
It's like a competition, like how busy are you versus me?
And you're just like, oh, this person said she was so busy, but she wouldn't know what busy was. Like, I'm so busy. And it's like, everyone has their own definition of busy.
Yes.
Everyone has their own definition of balance. And for me, balance is different every single day.
Of course.
There is a day that work will take priority, and my training and my career, relationship will take a backseat.
Yeah.
There are days that my relationship takes priority. Today is one of them. It's my partner's birthday. It's all about him, right? Like, work and those kinds of things can wait. And I think that it's so important that you prioritize the right things and you identify the things that you need to prioritize each day, not each week, each day, because there are things that need to be prioritized daily and changed daily. You know, Friday you might not be feeling very well, you feel, exhausted after the first week back at work, and you need to prioritize your mental health and your well-being. So maybe you pick up an extra yoga class and forego that dinner with your boyfriend's parents that you don't really want to go to because it's going to make you feel like shit. And I think that it's really important to look at it on a day-to-day basis as opposed to a weekly basis.
100%.
Because, or even a monthly basis, and go, okay, this month I'm focusing on training.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what happens if you have the busiest
Sick day.
busiest year of your,
Busiest
month of your year?
That month. Yeah. Yeah.
Then, you know, you're never going to succeed at that focusing on training, because
That's right.
work is always going to take that priority. So I think that, you know, I think it's really important that we remember that everybody's balance is different, but also everybody's busy is different. And I think it always makes me chuckle. Like, I just laugh to myself when someone goes, oh, did you hear that she said she was so busy? And I'm like, oh, get over it. Like, for what her threshold for busy
That's right.
is here.
Yes.
My threshold for busy is here. And I began to understand that when I spoke to my GP about 2 years ago. I had a stroke in my eye.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy, and it still takes me ages to get my head around. So what essentially happened, I was really busy for about 3 weeks, very little sleep with work, was pushing myself, constantly staring at a computer screen, pushing. And then Friday morning, I woke up and my eye was a little bit droopy, just one, cute. And it was a little bit droopy, and then over the course of the day, it completely shut. It was stone cold shut. And like, I tried everything to like be like, open it, couldn't open it. For 3 weeks, my eye stayed shut, just one of them. And
Wow.
they couldn't figure out what it was. And what they determined it was a response of stress on the body that had attacked the weakest part of my body, which was my eyes, because I wasn't wearing my glasses.
Right.
And
That's
it
crazy.
forced it to have almost like a Bell's palsy reaction that was temporary, shut one of my eyes for about 3 weeks. And I remember speaking to my GP, and he was like, are you busy or stressed or whatever? And I was like, oh, I mean, I've been busier and I've been more stressed in my life. And he was just like, yes, but he's like, your definition of busy versus the standard definition of busy or someone else's definition of busy is so different.
Yes.
And he's like, if you're operating at an already heightened level of stress or busy, and that's your normal.
Yes, I was going to say, you probably
when you're then
normalised it.
pushed up above that, your body is then so far away from where it should be that it just shuts down. So I think that really sung true for me, because, you know, I thought I was immune to anything. I was like, I've got this, I'm just going to keep working, I can sleep when I'm dead, all of that. And I think that, you know, it becomes this norm that you're like, oh yeah, I'm so busy, I've got so many pictures, I've got so many meetings, blah, 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 it's great, I'm busy, everyone loves me. But you're just doing more harm to your own self. Yeah. So I think that, you know, if that had happened to a person that isn't very stressed or busy in their life, you know, the level of stress for them would be so much more. But for me, I was like, I'm not really that busy or stressed. So I think that everyone's definition of busy is so vastly different. And I think that we just need to be a bit more understanding of one another's busy. You know, if you can't make a date with a girlfriend, or, you know, you can't make a date with friends because you're busy and that's what you deem yourself to be, then accept it. Like, let your friends accept it, and if they don't, then it's not the right network of friends to be around.
Not supportive for
Sack them.
No, that's definitely true. And I like how you've tied in like busy and balance. Like they're definitely, you know, on the same wavelength to some degree. And a key thing there, and it's something I've always said from the start of this podcast, is balance is not a fixed linear thing. You know, like, at the moment, your balance looks like X, and tomorrow or next year, whatever, it's going to change. When you have kids, big milestones will alter and shift your balance. But I think the key for everyone is that between health, and that encompasses both your physical and your mental relationships, whether it be love, friendships, family, and your fulfillment. So whether that is your career or a hobby or you're studying, whatever that means to you, I think at any stage in your life, you will have your hands or toes dipped in any of those to some degree. But like you said, depending on what happens in life, which is always out of our control, most of the time, it really is, you know, you have to reprioritize. And I think that is the skill that helps you rejig your balance, or just sort of get as close to being on top of it as you can all the time. It's about waking up and saying, okay, wow, this thing's just happened in my family. Everything I thought I had planned for the day, out the door. My daily habits sometimes out the door. I've got to prioritize this, and you have to be resilient with it, and you have to accept. I think it's a big acceptance piece, and say, okay, right now I'm on the downturn. I'm at a low point. but it's, you know, it's not permanent.
Yeah.
It's temporary, and I need to reshift and reprioritize. And then there'll be high moments, and it's just always a dance between those, and how you kind of interact with your priorities, I think, is a big deal. But knowing them to start with is very important.
Yeah, I think, you're so right. I think also when it comes to those things, you know, if a habit or something like movement for me is important to your mental health, it's not just an aesthetic thing. It's not just, it is bigger than that.
Yeah.
I think the systems that you put in place will help you manage that on a day-to-day basis, regardless of what your day throws at you.
Yes.
You know, so many people ask why I train so early. And I'm like, because nobody can call me, nobody can change the course of my day,
no
one
news.
can text me, nothing can happen to ruin that moment for me. And that means that then that becomes a non-negotiable of every day. And, you know, if I am resting or whatever and sleep in and decide to train later, then that's fine. But the systems that I set in place in order to ensure that I'm moving to maintain my mental health will ensure that I will train later on in the day. So I think it's not necessarily about having those, okay, I need to eat 5 carrots a day, I need to drink 5 litres of water a day. It's about doing that task every single day, regardless of whether it's, you know, bang on where you want to be or not. It's that consistency of doing something every single day. And that's why I said, you know, picking up a book, for me, I'm doing it every single day. Doesn't matter if I read 2 pages or 30 pages or an entire book in a sitting. I'm picking up a book every single day. And I think that the consistency is king when it comes to those things.
100%. I just want to ask you a little bit about, so when you're generally feeling a bit out of touch with your routine or balance, I know recently you've had, you know, a bit of an episode with your gut and like digestive issues, if I can exclaim on the show. And I know that impacted, you know, your ability to train and your what you were eating and things like that. So off the back of that, are there any go-tos for you personally when you do feel out of touch or off or just completely like overwhelmed? Yeah,
look, I think there's 2 things, right? I think when you're out of touch, when you're sick, your body takes priority, right? Like the weird thing when I was sick, or still am, / figuring out what's going on.
Journey.
We're on a journey. Yeah, we're on a sickness journey. That's where I'm at.
You'll have to watch the stories and watch his face.
Yeah, that's it. So I think that when you're sick, your body, the place in which you live, the place in which is sick, takes priority.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling like you don't want to exercise, don't, right? If you need to move for your mental health, do a yoga class or do something that's very calming and low impact on the body, because your body will thank you for it and thank you for moving. You know, even if it's just rolling your body out on like a foam roller, like that's so important to get the energy moving around your body if you're sitting stagnant or staying in bed when you're sick. For me, it's very strange because although I have had this big issue with my stomach, I've still felt well. So I've still been training. So a lot of people are like, you're sick, you shouldn't be training. But I feel fine, and I know that it's going to help me not dip into that mental health space that's like...
All you can focus on is your
all
stomach.
I can focus on is it's not getting any better. Like, this is 3 months it's been going on now. And if I wasn't training, I guarantee that my headspace would be a lot more negative than it is at the moment. So with training, because I am able to train during it, I feel a lot more positive about it. So I feel as though, okay, well, if this doesn't work, then we go on to the next thing, and it's a step-by-step process, right? But in terms of when I'm feeling off and it's just a normal day and, you know, something might have happened at work, or, you know, you've had a shitty conversation with a friend or something like that, I think music is such an important tool, and it's such an underrated tool to change your mood.
You're not the first to say it on the podcast. So
music is so important, and there are times that I have had the shittest, and I'm talking shittest day at work, and I've got in my car and I've turned up the music as loud as it possibly goes, because there is it's scientifically proven that there is a certain threshold of music volume, doesn't matter what the music is, that will then release that dopamine and endorphins that makes you feel good, right? So I blasted it. I used to do this well before the science was released, mind you, so it's not all
you're well ahead of the time.
I blast it, and I would literally, doesn't matter what song, I had a playlist that I'd just put on, and I would just play that on the way home, because the music was so loud I couldn't think about anything else.
Yeah.
And B, it made me feel good. So by the time I got home, I could then call my boyfriend and be like, my day was okay. It was pretty shit, but I was in a better headspace. I've given myself that time between work and home.
To decompress a little.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or if I get home, I'm not then snapping at somebody because I've had a shit day, but they don't know that I've had a shit day and therefore I'm taking it out on them, which isn't fair.
Yeah.
Music is a huge thing for me. So if I wake up feeling like shit at 5 a.m, the first thing I do is put my AirPods in and listen to a song that I'm into at the time. And a lot of people say, you know, what type of song, and it honestly doesn't matter. Could be country music, could be whatever I feel like at the time. So music is a big one for me. I think the energy, it's really funny because I used to laugh at people when they said, oh, you can tell your energy is really good. And I was like, whatever. Like, it's just, I think
I've said that to you as well.
No, but like 5 years ago, if you had said that to me, I would have just been like, what does she mean by that? Like, whatever. Like, what a weird thing to say. But now I'm like, surrounding yourself with people who have similar energy values to you is so important, because if I'm having a shit day, I don't want to call my negative Nancy friend and her be like, yeah, you're right, that was such a shit day.
Yeah.
Right? You want to call your friend and she's just like, it's okay, I'll come around, we'll have dinner.
Yeah.
Or, oh, that's so shit, I'm sorry that happened. Why don't we go for a walk tomorrow morning? And it's so important. I think if anything 2020 has taught us is that good people are vital to any workplace or relationship.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people have culled friends in 2020 because they've realised that those people, aren't the people that they thought they were.
Well, when times get tough, right? You see,
Absolutely.
you really
True
see
colours.
things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that it also then forces, you know, new friendships. And I think that you and I connected last year because, you know, we were both trying to train post-COVID, get back into training post-COVID. We've both been training at home, and those similar values and morals then click. So I think that having people with good energy, there's that word.
Now you're throwing it out. Look at that.
I love it. I'm
Boomerang.
Like, I think it's really funny. I think it's so cliche, and I laugh at myself, and I'll be the first person to put my hand up and be like, 5 years ago, if you'd been like, Hayley, you have really good energy, I'll be like, okay. Like, just nothing, right? But now I'm like, I realize the value and the importance of good energy. And I think that having good energy people in your life, whether that's your family, and I've worked for like the last 5 years to get rid of any toxic energy, whether it's friendships, relationships, workplaces, in my life, remove it. And if there's ever a toxic moment or negative energy from someone, something, a workplace, a client, a colleague, a gym, I don't go back.
Yeah.
Right? Because my energy is so important to stay positive. Because
100%.
if I drop down into that negative mindset, it then spirals down and I lose control of it.
So what about for anyone listening who might have a negative person in their family? They have to see them at family events. What would be your advice in that situation?
I think it's really important to not take it personally.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to say my sister and I are chalk and cheese. Very different, and I love her dearly, but we're very different. So that has often caused the root of misunderstandings, miscommunications. We like different things and all of that. And I think the one thing for me that's helped me communicate better with her is knowing that it's not a personal attack. She's not doing it because she doesn't like me. She's doing it because her values are different to mine.
Yeah.
Right? And if I was Joe Blow in the street, she's going to have the same reaction to what he said that what I said. So I think if you remove the personal element from it, one of my favorite things that I spoke about a lot when I had, you know, teams within the workplace. If you have two scenarios where you have a friend that you like and you get along with really well and your values align, and then you have a friend that you don't really get, is a bit weird, like you don't really like some of the things that they do or some of the things that they say, so you have that kind of negative feeling towards that person, right?
Yeah.
If you work with both these friends, they both call in sick on the same day. Both have no reason as to why they've called in sick, but they're both sick, right? Your immediate reaction to that person who is a good friend is, oh, poor thing, they must be so sick, like she probably needs the rest, blah, 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 blah. the person that you're reacting to that you don't really like or you've had run-ins with in the past, your immediate reaction is to go, oh, they're such a bludger. Like, they've probably gone out last night and they've got drunk and they just don't want to come in, and now they've left me with all the work to do, right?
Right.
But if you remove those two people, the problem at heart is exactly the same. They're both called into work sick, but your reaction to those two things are so vastly different that is based purely on who that person is and the relationship that you have with them. So I think that it is very easy to get caught up and go, oh, well, if you've heard that person say something negative before, your immediate reaction is to be like, oh, well, she's always so negative. And then you get frustrated by that because you're not a negative person.
Yeah.
Whereas if you can remove the person from that and actually just distill what they're trying to say or what they're saying.
The core of it, yeah.
Then you can actually have a lot more healthier conversations based on what fundamentally that person is saying, as opposed to what that person has done in the past or any attributes that you might be holding to them. So I think that that's really important, is to remove that kind of personal element from it, or remove the person from the problem.
Yeah.
And go, if this was a friend, would I call her out on it? If this was a workplace, would I call them out on it? And then deal with the problem at hand.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I would add to that and say, on the flip, if it is someone that is just a negative person, really just don't have much in common with them, you just limit your exposure to them. You know, you don't have to be rude to anyone, you don't have to be impolite. Absolutely. But if it is something like the workplace and you don't need to speak to that person all the time, just be courteous, and you don't need to extend yourself. Same at family events. Just hi, bye. But if you know that the topic of business or politics or whatever brings up a bit of a storm, avoid it.
Absolutely.
You know, it doesn't have to be a conversation you have.
Yeah. And I think also, just because you're interested in something doesn't mean that somebody else is. So if somebody's not showing that interest and you take that personally, that's on you. Like, you can, and as you said at the beginning, I think you can control how you react to things, and our reaction to things define who we are. So I think that if you can see a problem or a situation for what it is without the person, then you're going to be so much better off for it, because you'll be able to dissect, you know, divulge and figure out what it is that the conversation that you're having or the problem that has arisen without that person and that identification that you have with them being involved.
Yeah, and that process of like just really compartmentalizing and breaking it down will probably help you understand what your triggers are as well.
Absolutely.
And what you relate to. So, you know, it's the age-old rule, just count to 10, you know, and think about it before, because when we come from a place of emotion, we often very far removed from, like, I know that even in the recent past, like, you know, when I react in a moment where I'm feeling the emotion, I'm frustrated, I'm pissed off, whatever it is, like, what comes out of my mouth is not nearly as reflective as what is in my head. So sometimes you just need a hot minute.
You're so true. It's so right. And I think that also with that in mind, I think that, you know, we're not perfect. And I think that if we do say something, you know, I've recently done it as well about a month ago, where you've said something and you're like, look, I didn't want to upset you, but
really liquid paper that.
I meant what I said, and I would never take that back. But this is why I said it, and this is why I snapped, and this is why I was frustrated. And if you can articulate that, and if you have a reason for that, then fine. And if you can articulate that to that person and own your own flaws as well, I think it's very hypocritical to, you know, call people out on their flaws, but then when they call you out, you get... you know, you feel offended, and you're like, oh, well, you know, that's not what I thought. But that's somebody's opinion, and they're entitled to that. So I think, definitely breathing. But I think also, if you do fuck up, like, own it. If you do snap at somebody, we all have those moments where we reach boiling point, because unfortunately life isn't perfectly balanced. And I think that when you can own those flaws and you can own those mistakes and go, you know what, I'll be the first to put my hand up and say, this wasn't how I felt, or this wasn't what I wanted, or what I meant. Yeah,
but it is in those moments that you actually grow, because you think, okay, I've done this, I've acknowledged that I've done this. Is it something I want to change, or is that just who I am? Because if it is, you shouldn't be apologizing, and maybe you need a different group of people. But if it is something you genuinely, you know, want to take back or clarify, then that's a learning point for you. That's an opportunity for you to grow. So it's never... I would say, fortunately, life isn't balanced, because it would be so boring otherwise.
We'd all be bored.
It's true. Well, I think that's all we've got time for today. But I think we've talked a lot about, I think, predominantly like habits. And if anyone listening, this is our first podcast of the year. So it's January. Everyone's setting themselves up for the new year. If you have set yourself habits or like goals, or there are habits you do want to integrate, there's a lot that Hayley's shared today that we've spoken about. Even if you've got a goal that you've set but you haven't worked out how you're actually going to implement it in your routine, or what that habit means to you, I think there's a lot you can take away from today. But if anyone does want to reach out or chat to you personally, get to know you a bit more, where's the best place they can do so?
Probably Instagram. So Instagram, I've obviously got my profile there, and it's just Hayley Westoby. That's my full name.
Put the handle below.
Boring. But
original.
Very original. I actually recently got told that it's very uncommon for you to be able to get your name,
really?
Full name. Because a lot of people, there's a lot of double ups happening now. That
I'd be curious to see if
their,
mine was doubled up.
Yeah, initial name. So they've got to put numbers or something next to it. So original Hayley Westoby. And
we worth millions.
Yeah, we were, exactly. Well, hopefully there's a famous Hayley Westoby and I can sell my Instagram to her. And then my email is on there as well. So I get a lot of emails from people following, asking a little bit more deeper questions, or asking about various things that I'm doing. So
perfect. So if anyone's really resonated with anything Hayley said, she's super friendly. I actually think after the first time we met, we just hung out a couple times after, and I was like, I've literally known this girl for 2 days. But it just clicked.
It does. And I think that when you, like I said, you surround yourself with people with the same values, morals and energy, it just works. It can't not.
And when they get on with your mum too.
Yeah, it's a bonus.
It's always a bonus.
Hi, Mum.
She will be listening. Hi, Mum. But no, we'll leave it there. But thank you so much for your time. And I can't wait to see what this year brings for you.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. And that's a wrap for this week, Balancers. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found this episode useful to some degree in either steering or determining your definition of balance today. As always, the biggest compliment for us is if you share this episode with someone who you feel might need it, or if you're on Spotify, you can click follow, or on Apple Podcasts, you can leave a rating or review. If you have any suggestions for up and coming podcasts, feel free to shoot us a DM or an email. Our Instagram is @TheBalanceTheory, and our email is thebalancetheorypodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, you've always got the option of subscribing to our mailing list. We only send you email reminders when the episodes drop, so you get them fresh out of the oven. No annoying spam, we promise. I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, and until next time, stay balanced.